Welcome to Playmakers, everyone. I'm Hayley Elwood, and also welcome to March. Welcome to Women's History Month. We are back this month for 3 very special episodes highlighting 3 really amazing women making their mark in the NFL. And we are kicking things off with Venessa Hutchinson. Venessa is the Senior Manager of Football Development for the league. She's coming off the 5th annual Women's Careers in Football Forum, and she's here to talk about that and a lot of the other inclusionary efforts that are happening within the NFL. So let's get to it. Here's my conversation with Venessa Hutchinson. Venessa, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well today. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So the NFL just wrapped up the 5th annual Women's Careers in Football Forum just a couple weeks ago. I had Sam Rappaport on last year to talk about it, but for those who might have missed it or may not know, how would you describe that forum?
So the forum is this 2-day event that we host, usually at the Combine, but this year virtually. It's invite only. It consists of 40 qualified women, majority of which are currently working in college football and tend to have about 1 to 3 years of experience in that industry. And it's an opportunity for the women to learn, develop, and network, and really figure out the NFL is for them. And if it is, what areas they're interested in, and then introduce them to connections that can help them, progress in their careers. And so what it really does is it's a way for us to get rid of the excuse from clubs that they cannot find qualified women. The biggest known fact around the league is that men have these inner circles that they run in, and that's how people get jobs, and women are not a part of that. And so the forum is an attempt to add those women into the circle so they can end up on short lists for jobs, just as it works for men.
Yeah, I think the term boys club gets thrown around a lot, especially in the NFL. I sat in on day one. That was one of the really cool parts of it being virtual this year, was allowing media members to sit in. And someone had said at one point, the NFL, they don't even do this for men. Like, this is such a cool and such a unique opportunity. For it to be, though, virtual for this year, what was that format like? How did that work for you guys?
It was different for sure. Like, it was the biggest event any of us had put on virtually. We were streaming it to the clubs, we were streaming it to the media. And so there was a lot of prep work on the back end done. And I credit Andy Jamal for teaming up with us and handling all that. But this was the first year we utilized Zoom even, to meet the women in consideration for the forum invites. So that became a helpful avenue for us. It felt more official as we were meeting the women. We could read their body language. We could look someone in the eye, granted, through a camera, but it helped us get to know them more. And then, there were no limitations of being in Indianapolis and only, having a certain number of rooms to, keep the forum within. So we had no space limitations. We were able to invite anyone we wanted to speak and be a part of it, and travel was not a factor. Because generally some of the invites we put out is their responses, they don't generally go to Combine, so they can't participate. And so that was a huge plus. We had breakout sessions, and they served to be more intimate than we thought they would be. The speakers felt like they got to know the participants really, really well, and it was more conversational than you thought you could achieve virtually. And I think the biggest thing was the participants knew they had to stand out in front of a camera. They didn't have the opportunity to walk up to someone and give them a handshake and introduce themselves. So it was so interesting to watch participants, whether they were interacting with the panelists or they're a bit more, in the intimate setting of the breakout session, but they would introduce themselves to every person. They would ask the most meaningful questions, and they did their homework to make sure they asked deep questions that would really help them stand out with the club representatives. And so I thought those are some of the benefits of conducting it virtually.
I kind of love that, because as we've now gone through pretty much a whole year, essentially on Zoom or in a virtual setting, there are positives to take away from it. And I think that's a really cool point that you make too, about it not being limited to certain parts of the country or maybe travel as a hindrance or anything like that. And I love what you said too about having good questions and being able to stand out as well, that really you have one opportunity, but all those women made the most of it. For you specifically, your role, Senior Manager of Football Development for the NFL, what was your sort of part in all of this?
So, the awesome thing about Sam is, like, this vision is hers, from years back, and she came up with this. And I was hired on by Sam 3 years ago, actually, and a big part of my hiring was to work on the forum with her, help keep it growing, help make it get better, meet more women and bring them in for this. And so I've worked in college football, and I've worked for the front office of a club, and Sam viewed those as valuable assets and wanted that perspective in approaching the forum. And some of that came in as, we made college football really become the pipeline for this forum. And so, since I was hired, Sam, it's Sam and I, usually the beginning of every year, just initially in an office or on a call, brainstorming what we want this forum to be, who we want to invite, And the sky's the limit with Sam, which is the most awesome
It's
part.
great.
And then we go to work, and a lot of what I do is I meet and talk with a lot of the women that we end up inviting, holding calls year round, and Sam will hop in on those as well. Handle the majority of the speakers that we bring in for the panelists and the breakout sessions, and our strategy behind who we want to bring in for those. And as it's grown, we've brought on more and more help. And it's just it's my favorite event of the year. And any way I can contribute is awesome, but it's always a group effort, and no one has ownership over anything. Like, we constantly consult each other before every decision is made with the forum, because we all kind of care so greatly about it that we just want to make sure we're doing what's right.
It's a team, right?
Yes.
Just like anything else.
Yes.
Even if it's not directly playing on the field. One of the things that you had mentioned too is giving these women an opportunity. I think as a woman in sports, I think all of us though, we do need male allies. There are still a lot of men in top roles, leadership roles. You look at football teams and you look at coaches and GMs, it's all male dominated right now. 7 head coaches, 6 general managers were part of the forum. What was it like to see those men just be active champions for women in their roles in this game?
I mean, it means the world, and that's where the support has to come from. It has to come from those making the decisions, the ownership, the head coaches, the general managers. And you look at who came into the forum this year. We have a younger generation, of coaches and GMs that are starting their regimes, and at some point or another, a lot of those guys have worked with women in their front office, whether that be at the college level or the professional level. We look at Brad Holmes, who came from the Rams, where women are in operations, they're in strength and conditioning, they're in administration. Like, it's just normal to them, and they see women as belonging. And I think just the biggest testament is that, we had Terry, we had Brad, we had Nick Casario, we had Coach Sala, all that are only weeks into their new jobs, but literally asking us how they can be involved in this initiative. And it really tells you that, like, from the get-go, these new regimes are valuing diversity and want to incorporate it. So it's less of trying to get a club to embrace it and incorporate it, but they're starting from the beginning. And I think as more of those new regimes, get up and running, you're going to see more progress. They're more sincere in what they're doing, and they're not checking a box. They want this to be part of, the legacy they built.
Well, and at the end of the day, too, I think you ask any woman, you really ask anyone in sports, and you get the job because you're good at it. You shouldn't, like you said, check a box and be like, okay, we have a woman on this team. It's that she does that job better than anyone else. And I think one of the really cool things, you mentioned some of the newer coaches and newer GMs who were on the call, but you had some veteran guys as well. A few coaches gave out emails, like their own personal emails, to have women send them their tape, whatever it is. How cool is it just to see that connection being made in a really, really authentic way?
I mean, it was really great. They were so casual about it. They plugged it into the chat box of the Zoom and just, hit send and said, if you need anything, let us know. And it was great because, like I said before, like, women have been known to be out of those inner circles for so long that men have. And for a head coach to give a woman a direct link to them, the decision maker, ultimately, like, that's a game changer. That's a whole group of women that can now reach out and say, thank you for the opportunity that you gave us the Women's Forum, and continue to follow up with them on their careers and what's going on, and maybe potentially have an opportunity with them someday.
So 118 women have secured jobs since the forum's inception. We saw 2 women coach in the Super Bowl. I was there. I couldn't talk about Super Bowl 55 without talking about the impact that Sarah Thomas had on the game as well. What does that tell you about the progress that's being made with women in the NFL?
Women belong, and it's closed for discussion at this point. I know progress can never really be quick enough, it seems like, but the clubs and the fans are receptive to what's happening right now and going on in the league, and there's really no going back to that old boys club. And pretty soon the clubs that don't have women in their front office will be in the minority.
Yeah, I could see that as well. I think, I did a little piece ahead of the Super Bowl hosting there, and we talked a lot about, women specifically and that impact that they had on the game. And I went back to a quote that Katie Sowers had from Super Bowl 54, where she said, look, it's awesome that I'm the first, but what's most important is that I'm not the last. And we're so far past that, even just a year later. And I think, like you said, it's going to be the minority very, very soon. When you look at the women that were on the call, the participants in the forum, so many different backgrounds, whether it was women interested in training, front office, coaching. If someone is interested, maybe listening, how could they be a part of future sessions?
Get in touch with Sam Rappaport and myself. And it's not difficult. I mean, I LinkedIn messages, I answer all of them. Maybe not the fastest, but I get to everybody. I make sure we connect. Sam is great with that too. And the clubs are also great allies in this. They say, I came across this woman when I was visiting a school scouting and she was really impressive. Here's her resume. I'd love to connect you all. And so really just, figuring out how to get in touch. And like I said, we're around. My LinkedIn's right there. Connect with me. And those are all options for that. But, the other thing is just making sure you have that experience and you're ready to go for the forum. Go to your local college, your local high school, your football team's there. And if you want to gain more experience and really grow your network, find the time to volunteer with them too. And that's a big piece of it, is kind of the people who will kind of take any avenue they can to get experience. The clubs love seeing that.
I love one of the things that one of the women said, or maybe it was a guest on the call, where they had mentioned, hey, if you're interested in learning more about tape, like call your local high school, ask a coach to, sit with that high school coach and break down film of their team and just find different, like you said, ways and avenues to get more involved in the game, be more educated. I think one, though, great thing is that there's so many more resources out there right now. But like you said, too, it is also on you to put yourself in the best position possible. Now, for you personally, I know your role with the NFL expands just beyond the forum, but what else are you doing throughout the year to help just promote and expand diversity and inclusion in the league?
Yeah, so I work for the league office and I work in football operations. So I'm right under the guidance of, Troy Vincent. And, this is really his passion, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so the programs that I'm able to work on are, the Bill Walsh Diversity Coaching Fellowship, which is open to former NFL players and college coaches and hoping to get their hands-on experience with clubs, whether it's training camp or mini camp or OTAs. And the same goes for the Nunn-Wooten Scouting Fellowship, which I oversee as well. And that really falls on the scouting side of things and helping to, create opportunities and build networks for those interested in getting into the scouting realm. And those are just a couple of things. And we always have programming going on within our football operations department. But like I said, it's Troy's passion. And so it's primarily what I focus on year round.
Football teams, we've heard, microcosms of society, but when you look at sort of the business side of that, how does diversity, how does inclusion, how does adding more voices to the room really benefit those front offices overall?
Yeah, I mean, 100%, being the microcosms of society, when you surround yourself with like-minded people, it puts you at a disadvantage and it closes you off, to a majority of, candidates that are right for the candidate pool and qualified. And when people that think like you, that look like you, that run in the same circles as you is all you surround yourself with, you don't allow yourself to, challenge your thought process, to challenge your outlook on the world, to grow and develop. And when you embrace diversity and inclusion and you allow perspectives in and unique experiences into your club, you're at a benefit. It can change so many different things. You can reevaluate the way you evaluate players, the way you coach players, the way you're, building muscle on players in strength and conditioning or utilizing data and analytics. There are so many different viewpoints and perspectives that really could be embraced and make your club better for it. And I think that's really, really important to note. And when your biggest assets of your organization, your players are diverse, your front office needs to match that. And I think that all becomes applicable to outside organizations as well and society as a whole.
Absolutely. And then lastly, Venessa, look, at some point, women working in football, it's going to become the norm. It's not going to become the news. But as Sam Rappaport told me last year, we're going to keep having this conversation until it does. For you personally, what is your ultimate goal for women working in the NFL?
Honestly, my goal is for women to realize that they belong just as much as anyone else. There are a number of women who have talked themselves out of pursuing a career in the NFL because it just didn't seem in the cards. And I believe as we keep sending the message, one, through the forum that they belong, but as long as women continue to grow and ascend in NFL front offices, as long as firsts become seconds and thirds, and as long as diverse experiences and perspectives become more valued by leadership, that sense of belonging will really overshadow, all the other noise.
We're going to keep the conversation rolling. Venessa, thank you so much for coming on. We really, really appreciate it. Happy Women's History Month. We'll end it there.
Thank you so much. Same to you. Thank you for having me.